At this time, I would like to yield time to Representative Peter Visclosky, who is the Dean of the Democratic Delegation of Indiana.
I thank the gentlewoman for yielding, my good friend from Ohio, to honor Julia Carson and her life of work to the people she represented in her district, to the people of Indiana and this country. Yesterday on this floor, I talked about the light that Julia cast upon all of us, whether it was the twinkle in her eye or her burning desire to make the world a better place. This evening, I would like to talk about the strength of her character. Julia, when she was a young child, had a stuttering problem, but it was corrected and she was not deterred. As a 12-year-old, her mother, who scrubbed floors and took care of families and didn't get paid if she was sick, became ill. And at some point, the money had run out. And Julia went to the trustee's office to seek help. And ultimately, cornmeal and lard was pushed across the counter to her. When Julia was 4 years old, for the only time in her life, she met her father. Her father promised that he was going to be a constant figure in her life. He gave her $5, and he was never seen again. Her mother remarried to someone who used to beat her. And often her mother could not come to her school events because she was on place taking care of someone else's children. And she certainly, being a product of that time and that place, was subject to racism. In an article she wrote in March of 1996, when she was running for Congress, entitled "My Neighbor and Myself," she related one of those instances, and I think it really summed up Julia, who could be very tough, but also have a gentle touch. She wrote, "Another more amusing experience with racial stereotyping occurred when I worked with Congressman Andy Jacobs. One particular woman called our office quite often to complain about a wide variety of problems. I tried to be patient with her. I never realized that my many conversations with this woman had all occurred on the telephone until one day when she called, quite agitated, to inform me that a horrible thing had happened. A black family had moved in next door to her. It took me a minute to overcome my surprise, as she simply assumed that this competent public servant had to be white. However, after thinking about a wide assortment of possible responses, I simply replied, 'It's okay, honey. Just give it a chance. I have black families living all over my neighborhood, and it has turned out all right.'" And you could just see Julia saying that. In the end, many people would be embittered by experiences like that, but Julia was not. And as Andy Jacobs, her very dear friend, wrote, "From the physical pain of material poverty and the mindless, cruel persecution of racism, Julia Carson made her choice, a choice of hard work, compassion, and a pleasing sense of humor, and heaven smiled." And I know heaven is smiling on Julia tonight, and I would yield back my time.
At this time, I'd like to yield time to the chair of the Financial Services Committee, Barney Frank, who is the chair of the committee that Julia served upon.
I thank my friend from Ohio and the other friends who have gathered to really mourn our loss. I served on the Financial Services Committee with Julia Carson, and let's be honest, there are members of this body who, if you get to see them coming before they see you, you may not have a long conversation. But I sought Julia's company, She was a dedicated fighter for social justice, but she was also a delightful woman. She had that kind of air she put on of, oh, poor me. I feel sorry for anybody who fell for it. She had a brilliant mind, a wonderful sense of strategy, and as I said, she put all that at the service of caring for poor people. As a member of the Financial Services Committee, she was a constant and yielding advocate for fairness in our society. And I do also want to note, a number of people have mentioned my former colleague, many of us served with him, Andy Jacobs. Andy was the congressman from that district. He retired, and rarely has any politician fought as hard for another politician as Andy Jacobs did to elect Julia Carson. And to the minds of many, Julia wasn't a natural fit. People thought that she was not conservative enough for the district, not, let's be honest, white enough for the district. And, you know, race continues to be the besetting problem of America. We made some progress in it. We haven't resolved it. Andy Jacobs' dedication to helping elect Julia, and obviously she got there on her own, but Andy's helping run interference as Julia carried that ball really was one of the great acts of statesmanship. And then Julia made the most of the opportunity. I had the pleasure of going out to a district a couple of times because there was this sense on the part of some that a woman like Julia Carson, with her background and her set of values, couldn't possibly represent Indianapolis. Somehow they thought there was something gone wrong. But the people knew better. The people stood by her. And they stood by her because she was, as I said, as staunch a fighter for making this the kind of America we all want to live in as I ever saw. I miss her a great deal. I miss coming into the committee and seeing her pretending to look kind of angry and sad with a twinkle in her eye, ready for that comment that was going to put everything in perspective. Julia Carson was a wonderful member of this body, and the dignity with which she bore her last months of pain troubled all of us, but it was a fitting example of the extraordinary quality of a great woman. I thank the gentleman from Ohio and others for giving us this chance to express our appreciation for having had the benefit of her colleagueship for a while.